thank you everyone so much for joining us today from wherever you are zooming in from. So many locations and time zones represented in the chat I'm seeing, which is really wonderful. And thank you, of course, to all our wonderful speakers today joining us to celebrate the launch of Volume 5 of Monkey, New Writing from Japan. This is the 2024 Creatures issue. So a little bit of background, Monkey debuted in 2011 as Monkey Business, New Voices from Japan. It is still the same magazine with a slightly different name, but 13 years later, Monkey remains the only annual English language anthology of Japanese contemporary literature, creating a bridge between Japanese and American writers and readers to showcase the best in Japanese fiction in English translation, as well as other works, both old and new, by writers, artists, and translators. Volume 5 is now available in some bookstores and at monkeymagazine.org, which I think has been put in the chat. This year, we're joined by featured guest Tomoka Shibasaki, a winner of the Akutagawa Prize, and her next book in English is 100 Years and a Day, and will be released in February of 2025 by the Monkey imprint at Stonebridge Press. We're also joined by Leo Elizabeth Takada, a poet and translator who recently translated for Wim Wenders' acclaimed film Perfect Days. And as last year, our program will be led by Roland Kelts, Tokyo-based Japanese-American author, editor, lecturer, and scholar who used to contribute to our Letters from Tokyo series here at the Japan Society of Boston and is a contributing editor of Monkey. We are honored to have him and our other speakers today joining us. I appreciate everyone's patience with these introductions. And just once again, a final reminder, if you could adjust your Zoom name to whatever name you registered with, that would be very helpful for us. And now I'm going to go ahead and pass it along to Roland. Thank you.
Thank you, Joanne. Hi, everyone. I'm Roland, coming from Tokyo this morning. It's thrilling, as usual, to be a part of anything that happens with Monkey Magazine. I've been privileged to be a contributing editor to the publication since its launch in 2011. As Joanne just said, it's been around for 13 years now and continues chugging with an annual edition in English every year. It started as Monkey Business. Actually, that was the first title. So if you go to our website, monkeymagazine.org, you can get back issues of Monkey Business that date all the way to 2011, if they're still available. And the latest issue, as Joanne just said, is Monkey Volume 5. It's now called Monkey. So we dropped the business from the name, and I can let Moto tell you why we did that. But it's now called Monkey. This is Volume 5, and it's our Creatures issue, which is absolutely beautiful. If you haven't seen it yet, I was trying to find a shirt that matched the color of the graphic on the cover. I'm not quite sure I succeeded, but that's why I wore a bright red shirt this morning. Also to help me wake up. It's thrilling to be here. I want to tell you, first of all, that we're grateful to the Japan Foundation, Japan Society of Boston, with whom I've been fortunate to work for a number of years. And this year, Director Naoko Takayanagi and Joanne Ha and their team for inviting us to debut this magazine here. We're really honored. I also want to just give a shout out to my friend Peter Grilli, who is president emeritus of the Japan Society of Boston and who's been really instrumental in getting me involved with the JSB. I'm grateful to Peter and the former director. Also, I should mention Yuko Handa, who got me involved in the Letters from Tokyo series some years ago. So I'm grateful to them both. The Monkey core editorial team is co-founder Professor Ted Goosen of York University in Toronto. Ted is an esteemed translator and literary scholar and just a great guy, great friend of mine. Ted is very famous for editing the Oxford, what's it called, the Oxford Book of Japanese Short Stories, which is used all around the world. And Ted is there based in Toronto, as I mentioned. Good news is that he's on his way to Tokyo very soon, so we get to see each other after a long break. Ted co-founded the original Monkey in English with Motoyuki Shibata, who's a professor emeritus at the University of Tokyo, another dear, dear friend of mine over the years. Motoyuki Shibata is a multiple award-winning translator of American and British literature, and he's also an author in his own right. Moto and Ted came together and co-founded Monkey back in 2011, and now we have a brilliant and indefatigable managing editor, Meg Taylor, who does an extraordinary amount of work keeping this thing afloat on the North American side of this project. So big shout out to Ted and Meg, who are critical to the publication from the North American side. And we also have a great team you can see on the screen who help us out in multiple ways with design and promotion and events and so on. So we're really very, very, very lucky to have everyone on board. And we're very fortunate to have you joining us today and hope we can engage in some conversation or dialogue with you about translation, about literature. The title of this event is Japan's Literary Boom. This is kind of a boom time for Japan in general, culturally speaking. Many of you know, in terms of pop culture, manga and anime are huge hits all over the world. And Japanese literature has become a bestseller in some respects around the world, partly pioneered over the years by Haruki Murakami, who is a great supporter of Monkey and appears in many issues. And now names like Mieko Kawakami, Hiromi Kamikami, both of whom appear in Monkey over the years. And even there's a boom in Osamu Dazai. Some of you may know, partly because of the manga adaptation by Junji Ito, and also the huge anime hit Bungo Stray Dogs. So Japanese literature is hot, Japanese culture is hot, and I'm going to turn over this very hot mic to the great Motoyuki Shibata to carry us forward. Moto.
Okay, thanks, Roland. Yes, what he mentioned about monkey business and just monkey. The one thing we discovered doing a literary journal for 7 years with monkey business, what we discovered is that there is no business in literary business. So we simply took out monkey, that's it. Okay, and the other thing we do is that we of course publish a literary magazine annually. Oh no, this is Japanese version. This is the English version. Twins. Oh, we work with the wonderful publisher Stonebridge Press, and we do publish books as well. We have published 3 books so far, one by Ito Hiromi, one by Shibusawa Tatsuhiko, one by Kawakami Hiromi. And in February next year, 2025, we are publishing a collection of short story, amazing collection called 100 Years and a Day by Tomoka Shibasaki. We call this event, as Roland said, Japan's literary boom. And boom is, of course, the word that was used for Latin American literature back in the 1960s and 70s, when those books by great Latin American writers like Garcia Marquez, Borges were being translated one after another into English, and English-speaking readers were discovering those great writers. And I wouldn't claim that the same thing is thing on the same scale is happening in Japanese literary scene today, but still, I think it's true that the more and more North American writers in other English-speaking countries are eager to discover more new Japanese writers. And with the publication of 100 Years and the day. We are hoping and we are sure that the more readers will discover Tomoka Shibasaki. Is one of the most exciting writers in Japan, and she has published a number of books, which are each of them is good in its own way. But I like to focus on the new book, 100 Years a Day. It's a collection of 34 short stories. So each story is quite short, but they sometimes contain a whole life or whole lives, and the way she handles time and space is really nothing you encounter anywhere else. So to give you the specific idea, I'm going to ask Tomoka and Roland to read a story.
Thank you. It's an honor. I love Tomoka's work and have for many years. I was very fortunate to travel with Tomoka as well and do some events overseas. So we'll move on to this wonderful story from the new issue of Monkey, which has a title that's almost as long as the story itself. So let me start with the title and then maybe have Tomoka read the title in Japanese. The title is, After 2 years in a first-floor apartment, the tenant realizes that a certain cat would pass along the street in front at precisely the same time each day. Following the cat, the tenant sees it disappear into a vacant house. When the tenant first moved into the apartment, the house was not vacant. That's the title.
じゃあタイトル日本語でお願いします。
はい。よろしくお願いします。アパート1階の住人は、暮らし始めて2年経って、毎日同じ時間に路地を通る猫に気がつき、行く先を追ってみると、猫が入っていった空き家は、住人が引っ越してきた頃にはまだ空き家ではなかった。
And I'm reading the English translation by Polly Barton, by the way, an award-winning translator and an author in her own right. Polly is terrific. And this is a great translation. So I just want to make sure everybody knows.
はい。アパートの前の路地を夕方になると歩いていく猫がいた。サバ柄の一番多く見かけるタイプの毛色で、痩せても太ってもいなかったし、これといった特徴もなかったから、時々目にしても住人は気に留めていなかった。同じ猫がほとんど同じ時間に通ると気づいたのも、アパートの1階のその部屋に住んで2年も経ってからだった。いつから見かけていたのかもよく覚えていなかったが、少なくとも前の夏も春も見た記憶はあった。
In the evening, the cat would make its way across the narrow street in front of the apartment building. It was a tabby, neither skinny nor fat, with no distinguishing features to speak of. And when the tenant in the first-floor apartment saw it, she paid it no particular notice. It was only after living there for 2 years that the tenant realized the cat passed by it almost exactly the same time each day. She couldn't quite remember when she'd begun to notice the cat, but she definitely remembered seeing it in the summer and back in the spring.
猫は必ず駐車場のある角から歩いてきて、路地の奥の空き家の門の下へ入っていった。気づいてからは、住人は猫の行く先を何度か追ってみたが、その空き家に入ってからどこに行くのかわからなかった。そこをねぐらにしているのかもしれないが、近所の誰かが餌をやっている形跡も見つけられなかった。
The cat always came walking from the corner where the parking lot was and would vanish beneath the gates of a vacant house at the end of the street. Several times the tenant attempted to follow the cat, but once it entered the grounds of the vacant house, she didn't know where it went next. Perhaps the cat was using it as a place to sleep, she thought, but she had never seen any indication that someone in the neighborhood was feeding it.
猫が規則正しい生活をする生き物だとは知らなかった。 と友人に言うと、友人はそんなことも知らなかったのかと呆れたように言った。その友人は生まれる前から家に猫がおり、しかも2匹か3匹いるのが常で、一人暮らしをしている今も実家から連れてきた1匹が傍らにいた。黒猫だった。人見知りの激しい猫で、住人が部屋を訪ねると、いつも押し入れに隠れてしまうので、姿を見たのは一度だけだった。
When the tenant commented to a friend that she hadn't been aware that cats were creatures of such set habits, the friend seemed astonished. The friend's family had kept cats since before she was born, not just one either, but 2 or 3 at a time. The friend now lived alone, but she'd brought one of the cats from home to her new place. It was a black cat, terribly shy. When the tenant visited her friend, the cat would always hide in the closet, so she'd seen it only once.
飼ったこともないのにわかるわけがないと住人は拗ねたように言った。それに猫を飼っている人は気ままなところが良いと言うではないかと反論すると、それは素人の意見だと友人は言った。猫をよく知らない者が、猫は懐かないだとか、人につかないで家につくとか、犬のように愛情を表現したりしないと分かったようなことを言う。しかし、うちの猫は自分が帰宅すれば玄関で待っているし、今の家に連れてきた時も自分がいるから全く戸惑わなかった。
Well, how could I know about cats if I've never had one? The tenant asked sulkily. Besides, she argued, people who have cats say they like the fact that they're so easygoing, don't they? The friend replied that this clearly came from someone who was not a cat person. People who don't understand cats will declare knowingly that cats don't take to people, or that they're more attached to places than to people, or that they don't show affection like dogs do, she said. But when I was growing up, my cats would always be waiting in the entrance for me when I got home. And the one I'm living with now wasn't fazed at all by the move from my parents' house because I was there with him.
友人からそのような猫の生態を聞いたところで、路地を歩くサバ柄がどこから現れてどこへ行くのかはわからなかった。秋になって日が落ちるのが早くなると、サバ柄が歩いてくる時間も早まった。時計の時間ではなく、自然の条件によって行動しているのだな、と住人は妙に感動した。自宅で書き物仕事をしている住人は、サバ柄が通る時間に合わせて散歩に出ることにしていた。
Yet hearing about cats from the friend didn't help the tenant to understand where the tabby appeared from and where it went. When fall came and the sun began setting earlier in the day, the hour of the cat's passage also grew earlier. The tenant felt strangely impressed to discover that the cat was moving in accordance not with time as it appeared on the clock, but with more natural rhythms. The tenant, who worked at home as a writer, began taking a walk at the same time that the tabby passed by.
住人がアパートの前に出てしばらくすると、猫は駐車場の角を曲がってくる。心なしか急ぎ足である。辺りを見回すようなこともなく、正面を見てまっすぐ歩いてくる。住人に気づくと足を止める。それからゆっくりと住人を見る。住人も見返す。目が合っている間は、サバ柄は動かない。出しかけた前足を止めて静止している。猫の瞳が明るくない時には丸い黒目になることさえ、住人はこの猫によって知った。猫の瞳は常に縦に細いものだと思っていたのだった。あまりにじっとしているので、住人が申し訳なくなって目をそらすと、一時停止から再生ボタンを押したように、とっとっとっとと歩き出す。そして空き家の門扉の下をくぐって姿が見えなくなるのだった。
Shortly after the tenant emerged from her apartment one evening, the cat turned the corner into the parking lot. Its gait seemed slightly hurried. It walked with its gaze pinned straight ahead, not turning its head to look around. Noticing the tenant, it stopped and slowly turned its head toward her. The tenant returned its gaze. So long as the pair's eyes remained locked, the tabby didn't move. Its front leg, which had begun to extend, was frozen in position. She had learned from watching the cat that in dim light, a cat's pupils expand to black orbs. She had previously believed that their pupils were always vertical slits. Feeling bad for staring so intently, the tenant looked away and the cat continued walking, as if it had just been on pause and now someone had hit the play button. It passed under the gate of the vacant house and disappeared from sight.
空き家は住人がここに越してきた時には人の気配がまだあった。門が少し開いて、その前に自転車が止まっているのを何度か見かけた。しかし、窓に明かりがついているのを見た覚えはないし、自転車以外に誰かが生活している様子を感じたことはなかった。もちろん、住んでいる人の姿を見たこともなかった。
When the tenant had first moved in, there were signs that someone was living in the now vacant house. Several times she had seen the gate slightly ajar, with a bike parked in front. She didn't recall ever seeing lights on in the windows, though, and there was no sign of life apart from the bicycle. Of course, she'd never seen the people who lived there.
2階建ての目立った装飾もない家である。昔の風情を感じる木造家屋でもないし、設計に凝った四角い家でもない。モルタルの壁もアルミサッシもすべてどこの町でもいくらでも見かけるものだった。あの家だと床下に入り込んでねぐらにするというのも難しいのではないかと、サバ柄の後ろ姿を見送って住人は考えた。あの空き家も通り道の一部で、その向こうのどこかに帰る場所があるのだろう。サバ柄は毛艶も良かったので、どこかで餌をもらっているに違いない。住人のサバ柄観察は続いたが、冬になる前に住人は急に実家に戻らねばならなくなった。父親が体調を崩し、家業を手伝うことになったのだ。引っ越す前の日にも住人はサバ柄が空き家へ入っていくのを確認した。
It was a two-story house with no decorative features, neither a traditional wood construction steeped in a sense of history, nor a modern concrete cube declaring its designer credentials. The textured plaster walls and sliding windows were the kind you could see in any neighborhood. As the tenant watched the cat disappear, it occurred to her how difficult it must be to crawl beneath the floorboards of this house to sleep. Maybe the vacant house was just a stage on its journey, and the cat had a destination beyond. Its fur looked glossy enough, so it must be getting fed somewhere. The tenant's observation of the tabby continued, but just before winter came, she had to return suddenly to her family home. Her father had taken ill, and they needed her help with the family business. On the day she moved out, the tenant watched the cat disappear into the vacant house.
空き家は確かに住人がアパートに越してきた時にはまだ完全な空き家ではなかった。家主の老人は半年前から入退院を繰り返しており、近くに住む次女が荷物を取りに来たり、家を掃除したりしていた。住人が越してきた頃には、家主は最後の長い入院生活を送っていた。家主が死んだ後もしばらく、次女が家を片付けに来ていた。その頃、次女もサバ柄の猫を時折見かけていた。庭というよりも、塀との隙間程度の細長い場所に面したガラス戸を開けて掃除していると、そこをサバ柄が歩いていった。必ず門の方からやってきて、積み上げた使っていない植木鉢を足場にしてブロック塀に上がり、裏手の家の方へ歩いていくのだった。次女は1メートル50センチはある塀に飛び乗る猫の軽やかさにいつも見とれてしまった。
The house had definitely not been fully vacant when the tenant moved into her apartment. Its owner had been in and out of hospital for 6 months, and her second daughter, who lived close by, would come around to collect the mail and clean the house. When the tenant moved in, the owner was midway through a final protracted stay in the hospital. For a while after the owner died, the daughter would come by to sort out the house. During that time, the daughter would also spot the cat from time to time. While cleaning the house, she would open the glass door to the garden, though really that space barely deserved the appellation, described more accurately as a long, thin gap between house and wall, and the cat would stroll past.
次女も猫を飼ったことはなかった。子供の頃、この家で犬を飼っていたことはあった。長男が中学校の帰り道に拾ってきた犬だった。学校の近くから家までついてきたのだと長男は言った。五郎と名前をつけた。その時は小さくコロコロとしていたが、雑種で予想よりかなり大きくなり、散歩に難儀した。散歩に連れて出たのは主に父親だった。五郎が家に来た時にはまだ小学校に入ったばかりだった次女も、五郎のことを可愛がっていたが、一度猫を飼ってみたいとずっと思っていた。しかし、両親も結婚相手も猫嫌いで、その願望は未だに叶わずにいた。だから、サバガラをもっと近くで見たかったが、近づくとサバガラは逃げてしまうのだった。
It always approached from the direction of the gate, using the stack of empty flower pots as a platform from which to jump up onto the concrete wall, and walked off toward the house at the back. The daughter was always amazed by the cat's light-footed movements when it leapt onto that 5-foot wall. The daughter had never had a cat either. When she was a child growing up in this house, there'd been a dog. Her elder brother had rescued it on his home one day from junior high school. He said that it had followed him home from near the school. They named the dog Goro. At first it was small and round, but it was a mongrel and grew to be larger than expected, and walking it became a lot of work. It was mostly their father who walked the dog. The daughter, who had just started elementary school when Goro arrived, loved him very much but had always wanted a cat. Both her parents, however, hated cats, and later, so did her husband, and so her wish had never been fulfilled. Whenever she noticed the tabby, she would be taken by the desire to see it up close, but if she tried approaching, it would run away.
ブロック塀に上がったサバガラは、そのまま塀伝いに歩いていった。裏手の家には猫がいた。真っ白い毛の長い猫だった。だが、その家では猫を外に出さないように気を配っていて、いつも2階の窓に猫は座っていた。サバガラが見上げると、白猫もこちらを見下ろした。
The tabby, having leapt up onto the wall, now made its way along the top. Another cat lived in the house behind. It was a pure, white, long-haired cat. The people in that house were careful not to let it outside, and it was always sitting in a window on the second floor. When the tabby looked up, the white cat would look down.
白猫が座っている窓は、その家の一人娘の部屋だった。一人娘は別の町の大学に通って、その町で就職したのだが、部屋はそのままで置いてあった。長い休みになると、娘は帰ってきて3、4日過ごした。部屋に転がって猫を撫でた。猫は母親の知り合いから譲ってもらった。娘が中学生の時だった。子猫が家にやってきた時、娘はこんなに小さな生き物はすぐに死んでしまうのではないかと不安になって、最初はなかなか離れなかった。白い猫はすぐに成長して、友達の家の猫よりも大きな体になった。娘は猫が傍らにいると安心した。その猫ももう15歳近くなり、昔のようにお気に入りのおもちゃを振ってみても、ちらっと見るだけで遊ばなくなった。娘がいないときはほとんど一日中窓辺にいるのだと母親から聞いた。娘は白い猫を今住んでいる部屋に連れて帰りたかったが、狭いアパートで昼間誰もいないのはかわいそうだったし、母親が自分よりも猫を可愛がっているのを知っていた。娘が今住んでいるところへ帰っていくと、白い猫は窓辺に上がった。サバ柄の猫が通るのを待っていた。
The window in which the white cat was sitting was in the bedroom belonging to the daughter of the house. An only child, she had left home to attend university in a different city and subsequently found a job there, but her room in the family home remained as it was. During the long holidays, the daughter would return home for 3 or 4 days. She would lie around in her room, petting the cat. The cat had been given to them by someone her mother knew back when the daughter was in junior high school. When the kitten first arrived, she was hesitant to touch it, concerned that a creature that small would die if she so much as laid a finger on it. The white kitten grew rapidly and was soon bigger than her friend's cat. The daughter found the cat's presence reassuring. Now almost 15, the cat no longer rushed over to play with its favorite toys when the daughter offered them, but merely glanced in their direction. Her mother had told her that when she wasn't there, the cat would spend practically the whole day sitting by the window. The daughter wanted to bring the cat with her to the place she now lived, but she felt bad about leaving it alone in a small apartment during the day, and she knew that her mother took better care of it than she did. When the daughter left, the white cat jumped up to the windowsill. It was waiting for the tabby to pass.
日が暮れる前に現れたサバガラは、白い猫を見上げた後、ブロック塀の上でしばらく顔を洗っていた。その後はさらにブロック塀を歩き、その先の平屋の屋根、物置と伝わって、それから狭い路地へ降り、小さな祠のある角を曲がった。大雨だったり大雪だったりした日以外は毎日同じだった。
The tabby appeared just before sunset. After glancing up at the white cat, it would sit on the wall for a while, washing its face. Then it would walk farther along the wall and use the roof of the house and the shed to jump down into the narrow alley, turning the corner by the small roadside shrine. Its routine was exactly the same every day, except when it was pouring rain or snowing.
ある日、空き家の取り壊しが始まって、そこは猫の道ではなくなった。
One day, demolition work began on the vacant house, and the cat no longer passed by.
Thank you both. Great reading. Roland?
Arigato. I'm always taken in Tomoka's work by how she compresses and expands time, plays with time. As you can probably tell in this story that we just read, the cats have a different...
Leo interpreted.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Right.
この話からも分かるように、いつも友果さんがその時間というものをこう圧縮したいとか、こう押し広げたいとか、そういうテクニックを持っているということに驚いています。
So I'd like to ask Tomoka a simple question, which is how she experiences time. In this story we just read, I think the cats maybe have a better sense of the reality of time than the human beings around them. Tomoka, how do you experience time? Do you feel more comfortable with the cats or with the people in this story?
では、友果さんにその時間というものをどのように経験しているかということをお伺いしたいんですけれども、例えばこのお話では、猫の方がその時間のリアリティっていうものをより豊かに経験しているというふうに思うんですけれども、友果さん自身は時間というものをどのように体験していますか？
そうですね。猫を見ていると猫の時間があると思うし、ここで通り道になっている方の家を見ていると家というものが持っている時間のことを想像しますし、そういうふうに人間の時間だけじゃなくていろんな例えば木を見ても何十年っていう何百年っていうもっと人間よりも長い時間が想像できるし、そういう人間と違う時間でが流れているものに対して想像するのが好きでとか、言葉とか文章っていうのはその想像をこう行き来することができるものだと思っています。
Well, I feel that like cats here and the houses here have live its own time that is different from human beings, and I like to imagine how these something that like non-humans experience its own time, and writing and through writing text, I think you can experience those times in different ways, that how the time flows in like ways that us humans live, and those things have those cats and houses and alleys and all experience time in different flows.
Yeah, there's a to me a key line in the story. The tenant felt strangely impressed to discover that the cat was moving in accordance not with time as it appeared on the clock, but with more natural rhythms. To me, that line in the story really sort of crystallizes what the sense of the story of time is.
今回そのお話の本質、その時間というものが特によく現れているところというのは、その猫っていうのはその時計の時間とは別の時間を生きているという一文があったと思うんですけれども、そこが特にこのお話の肝になっているなというふうに感じました。
はい、そうですね。人間は今はなんか今日の何時までにこれをやろうとか、来週はこういう予定があるからっていうその区切った等間隔で区切った時間が当たり前だと思って生きているんですけれども、だから何百年前かだったら人間ももっと自然の、日が暮れる時間とかに合わせて生きていったと思うし、そういうなんか人間があまりに今の時間に縛られている、これが当たり前だと思いすぎているなと思うところがあって、何かもっと違う時間で生きることもできるんじゃないかなというようなことを思いながら書いていました。
Well, now we live by time, we live by the clock, like what time it is now and what we're doing next week, and we have this kind of equal measurements of time. But maybe 100 years ago, we lived in a different. We had a different idea about time. Like we lived by the sun when the sun sets, and we lived by more natural flow of time. And now we have more fixed ideas about time, but through my writing, maybe you can experience something different.
I should also just quickly mention here that Tomoka writes, or I shouldn't say writes, she is originally from Osaka, which is a region of Japan we think of here in Tokyo as Western Japan, Kansai region. And within that region, there is a Kansai dialect. But within that Kansai dialect, there is actually an Osaka dialect, Osaka Ben. And as Tomoka has pointed out in the past, if you actually speak Osaka dialect, you don't think of it as a dialect. It's natural Japanese. But of course, here in Tokyo, people consider Tokyo Japanese as the mainstream Japanese, and Osaka dialect as a separate, independent dialect. Tomoka, I wonder very quickly if you could talk a little bit about your writing coming from Osaka in that dialect, and then of course moving to Tokyo and living your life here now.
ですね。ともかさん、大阪のご出身なわけですけれども、大阪、日本で大阪というと、やっぱり関西圏という印象がとても強くって、関西弁を話すところという、そういうふうな、イメージがあるわけですけれども、ともかさんは過去に、その大阪の人にとっては大阪弁というのはあくまで自然なものであって、でも東京に住んでいると、東京の人はやっぱり東京弁というものが一番自然な日本語だというふうに思って生きているということがあって、そこの違いがあると思うんですけれども、その大阪で書いていて、そして東京でまた自分の文章を書くということで、何かこう変化というものは感じましたか？
そうです。大阪にいるときは自分が人と話して、大阪の人と話している言葉とか会話の流れとかがすごく当たり前のものだと、これが会話とはこういうものだっていうふうに思っていたんですけれども、東京に移ってからその特徴がどういうところがそういう大阪弁のなんか他と違うところなのかっていうことをすごく考えるように気がつくようになりました。で、特に大阪弁というのは会話で人と話を続けること自体が目的なんじゃないかっていう、とにかくこう何かを A は B ですっていうふうに伝えたいというよりかは A なんだけど B なんだけどそれはこうなんじゃないかなみたいなことをずーっとそのキャッチボールをなんかひたすら続けたいひたすら続けるためにある言葉なんじゃないかなと思ってなんか話すこと自体の面白さ言葉自体のなんか響きをすごく重要視してる言葉大阪弁はそういう言葉じゃないかと思っています。
Yeah, when I was in Osaka, well, Osaka dialect was my very natural conversation, but when I moved to after moving to Tokyo, I started to see its characteristics and started thinking about what Osaka dialect is. And my I understand that Osaka dialect is more about going on and continuing the conversation instead of just explaining what A is B or defining something. Is you just say, oh, it could be A, it could be B, it could be C, and you just like you just go on and continue the conversation with somebody else. And maybe Osaka Ben is more about enjoying having conversation and appreciating the sound of language instead of communicating the facts.
ありがとう。Thank you so much, Tomoka. That's fascinating. I wish we had more time. We'll talk later. But speaking of going between dialects and the differences between dialects, the poet who's interpreting for us right now, Leo, is not only goes between dialects but goes between languages. Is a translator and today an impromptu interpreter, and also a poet who writes in 2 languages, writes original work in 2 different languages, English and Japanese. So, Leo, I'd like to sort of shift the spotlight over to you for now and ask you about doing that. I mean, writing original work in 2 different languages. What are the challenges that you face, and maybe what are the joys or the liberations or freedoms of writing in 2 different languages?
Well, that's a very interesting question. Well, when I write in different languages, I feel that the language, well, the Japanese language and the English language demand first something different. It has like this certain custom that is unique to each realm, and well, what I do is just like simply follow their custom when I like enter their land. And well, in terms of difficulties, well, my Japanese is my first language, so obviously when I write in English, I feel that my ability is limited. But it's nice to have this kind of like a restriction when you write poems because it's something that's like very different from your daily dialogues. So you need something that is kind of like weird. And yeah, that's what I enjoy about writing in English poems.
You know, it's interesting you say that because one time the novelist Haruki Murakami said to me that when he gives a speech in English, it's actually a bit easier because he has less vocabulary. You know, his native Japanese, he has so many different choices of words, but when he's asked to say something in English, the vocabulary is limited. So there's a kind of clarity or simplicity that he can achieve. Would you agree with that? I mean, I'm sort of following up on what you're saying. Is there something I don't know, clarifying about going into your second language, which in your case, as you said, is English? Does it simplify things in a helpful way?
Well, yeah, I can agree. Yeah, it does because when you're like grammar and your vocabularies are like limited, you really have to go dig deep down into yourself and think what you really want to communicate because you can't like go on and on. It's not like Osaka, you can't like go on and on because you don't have the freedom. And yeah, I do agree with Haruki.
Mm, mm, mm.
I
When
think
you
we're going.
write bilingually, which is the original for you, or are both originals?
Oh, that is a difficult question because I do write in English first for my poems, but when I translate my own work, it's like starting from scratch in a sense because the two
Mm,
languages are like composed in a very different way. It's like making a sculpture out of different materials. Like say English is like
mm,
basalt and Japanese is like I don't know clay or like wood. And hopefully the end product you get is something like similar. It's like similar
mm,
like sizes and shapes and textures, but the process you follow is very different.
mm,
Like when you carve stones and when you carve like woods, the tools you use are like very different. And yeah, and you're trying to like achieve something like similar in the end, but the process is like very different. So it does feel like writing poems in two languages.
mm. You know, there have been some poets and even novelists who did, what is called self-translation. But your case seems to be very unique that, you sort of write in two languages, from the beginning. I mean, it's not like finishing, one version and then go on to, translate it into the other. You sort of, create twice.
Yeah, I guess that's what I do.
Mm. Mm.
Yeah, I feel like I need two languages to complete a poem, like a my
Mm.
poem, because I don't know. Well, in a sense, writing poems and translating my own work is kind of like similar experience and of like finding the right word for I don't know where the original is, but it's like finding the right word for
Mm.
both my like poems and translations, and so I feel like I'm using kind of like similar ability to for my writing too, and yeah, and I need it to be some sort of a twin. Yeah, that's what I feel.
Mm. Okay.
Leo has translated a beautiful and quite striking poem for A Monkey Volume 5, Inuo Taguchi's A Phone Call from Emily Dickinson. Speaking of going
Mhm.
between languages and cultures. I'm wondering, Leo, if we could ask you to read a stanza or a section of that poem for us.
Okay.
Thanks.
Well, Taguchi's poem is composed of 9 sections and it's quite long, so I think I'm going to read the last section. A phone call. I'm on a call. How beautiful it is. This is what reading a poem is. You're there on the other end, and your breath is here now. Your suffering and joy are happening in this very moment. Whenever I return to your words, they ask me, is your life happening now at this moment? In a quiet tone.
Beautiful. Thank you very much. And this is her own latest collection of poems. How do you pronounce the title?
Anamnesiac.
Okay. Thank you. Right. Okay. I think it's time for taking questions.
Yes, any questions can be typed into the chat, or if you want to raise your hand and voice a question to the group, that's all right as well.
Oh, can we see the turtle poem? Somebody asked to see the turtle poem. This is my favorite piece in this collection. I'm very partial to turtles.
Do we have time? Do we have time to ask Leo to read it in both languages?
Oh, man.
Sure.
That would be wonderful.
Okay. Turtle. Slow motion is another technique to collect the sunlight on your back. You feel the pat on every crack. The voices, vistas, vocabularies, visions, vibrations, and verses of a million of ears. And here we are. Kame. スローモーションも良い技法。それで背中に日だまりが集う。割れ目に一つずつ触れる。ポンポン。Voice, Vista, Vocabulary, Vision, Vibration, Verse たち。万年の歳月を刻んで。そしてここで私と。Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you. That was wonderful.
Yeah.
I wanted to, I know we have some questions coming in, but I also wanted to, while we have Tomoka here, Tomoka is coming to us from Los Angeles, where she's at UCLA, and she's also, I believe, also taught at University of Iowa in the writing program there. Tomoka, I just want to ask you broadly this broad question, but what's your reaction to teaching in the United States? Which is still a very different culture from Japanese culture and Japanese classrooms. What are your observations? How's it going, etc. at UCLA?
ともかさんは今 UCLA で教えていらして、以前は Iowa でも教えていらしたと思うんですけれども、そのアメリカで教えるっていうことの、経験について少し広いざっくりとした質問なんですけど、お伺いしたくて、日本とはかなりカルチャーが異なると思うんですけれども、そこで、何か分かったこととか、気づいたこととかありましたら、教えていただければと思います。
アイオワの方は教えていた方というよりはプログラムに参加して他のいろんな国の作家と同じ立場でディスカッションしていたという感じなんですけども、で今回は主に大学院とか博士課程の学生と一緒に日本の小説を読んでいるんですが、やっぱりアメリカというところはいろんな国からの人が集まっていて、それぞれのバックグラウンドがあって、で今回もイタリアとかインドとか中国の方が参加してくださってて、でそこでどういうふうに小説とこの日本の小説と出会ったかとか読み方も本当に様々で、そこでのやっぱり同じ背景を日本だとやっぱりある程度同じ背景を共有してなんか共通のことをベースにして読んでいくという感じなんですけれども、なんかアメリカだとやっぱりもっと、そうではないというかなんか小説の中に自体に本当にいろんな発見をしていくという感じがします。
Well, when I was in Iowa, I wasn't teaching. I was part of the program as one of the students, and now I'm teaching PhD students, and we study Japanese novels together with students from everywhere, from various backgrounds, like from Italy or China. And I usually ask them how they got interested in Japanese literature, and the answer is very different by each students. And well, when I taught in Japan, we share something more common, and we discuss based on those common understandings. But it's very different in the US. And rather than doing that, we look more into the actual literature piece, and it's more about discovery.
We have just going to address a couple of questions while we have a few more minutes here. Something that I think I'm going to let you take up, Moto. This question about how you decide the themes for the issues and how do you decide what fits a certain theme? Like, what's the editorial decision process like for you and for obviously for Ted and Meg?
Usually, we have some stories or poems that we really love to publish. And we sort of, built around those stories. So, okay, so three of these stories all concern animals. So let's do, creatures issue and that sort of thing. I mean, it's not a very intellectual way to do it. We just, we simply, love to publish, what we love. And we don't, I think this is a wonderful, introduction to what's going on in Japanese literature, contemporary Japanese fiction, but we don't aim to be comprehensive. We never do, okay, we don't like this very much, but this is very popular, so let's include it. No, we don't do that. I mean, you are Roland, you are a contributing editor as well. So we simply, love to publish what we love, and we are very partial, and we are not ashamed.
We are not ashamed, no. Can we talk about the issue that we're working on now, Moto? When one issue comes out, we're working on the next issue. And I wonder, Moto, if you can tell the audience what we're working on for the next issue.
We are working on horror.
Horror.
I mean, horror has never been so relevant, both in both countries or anywhere in the world. In so many senses.
How would you personally define horror as a genre? I mean, there's the obvious horror movies and blood and guts and the grotesque. There's something else you can define as horror.
Yeah, there doesn't have to be blood. It's simply about the sense that the world is such an uncomfortable place. That's the shortest definition of horror for me.
We have Meg Taylor here. Meg, can I ask you to chime in on this idea of horror in literature and in Monkey and what you think the magazine's trying to do?
Sure, I just unmuted myself.
This is the boss.
The boss.
I'm not the boss. Hi. Yeah, exactly. It's a very uneasy time we're living in, and we're not presenting horror as blood and guts. No, Moto mentioned this. This is not horror in the genre sense, but it's we're looking at stories that make you feel, that horrify you. It's a very deep feeling. It's what we're all going through right now, and we're reflecting that in the stories we're picking. But we're having fun with it. Despite, I mean, it sounds very dark, but we're also having fun, as we always do. I mean, that's what we do, is have fun. So
yeah, that's what's great about literature. No matter how horrible the subject is, it's always fun. I mean, it has to be.
Yes, absolutely.
We call this Japan's literary boom. And just before we go, I hope we have a couple more minutes. I just wanted to ask our guests, both Tomoka and Leo, why you think Japanese literature and storytelling, broadly speaking, is somehow seems to speak to the rest of the world right now. it's obviously not the first time in history. We have Genji Monogatari and we have Mishima Yukio and we have great Japanese writers. But here in the 21st century, in 2024, it does seem that there's a real interest in Japanese narratives. They're not always in literature, sometimes in manga, as I said earlier, and sometimes in anime in different forms, but there's a real sort of fascination with it. And I wonder if I can ask both of you to, just for your opinions, why you think Japanese storytelling is so popular right now.
個人的な見解で構わないんですけれども、今なんで21世紀になって、日本のこの文学、文学に限らず漫画であったりとか、日本的なこの物語というものが、こんなに注目を集めることになっているんだと思いますか？
そうですね。私もいろんな国に行って、そういうお話を聞く機会があって、そうすると、本当にどこが好きかとか、どこ面白いと思っているかっていうのが、本当にいろいろ違うんですよね。だからいろんな、なんか今までに自分の身近にはなかったけれども、ここの中にはあるっていうのをこう見出せるようなものが入り口がたくさんあるのかなと思っています。そういうふうに自分のことを反映させて、ここになんか自分の居場所があるとか、自分がなんか求めていた感覚がここにあるんじゃないかって思うような入れる箇所がたくさんあるのかなっていうふうに感じています。
Oh, I hear that Japanese literature is people are growing interest all over the world, but the answer I get is like very different from every time I ask, and I guess the Japanese literary works have very many unique points that gets people interested and allow them to reflect themselves and find something that they can call home, as some kind of sense that they crave for and couldn't find anywhere else. So I guess there are many books that get people interested in Japanese narratives.
And Leo, what are your thoughts about that?
This is a very difficult question, but I feel like I'm not sure if you can say this for like every work, but I think it's the texture of hiragana that is very unique to Japanese writing. And like kanji is more, well, it's from China and has its like own meanings. It's an ideogram. And it's some how do I say it? It's actually kanji is easier to translate into English. That's the feeling I get. And katakana is obviously a phonogram that represents bold words from foreign languages. So that is like closer to different languages too. But hiragana is very, very unique and difficult and to translate and express its like meaning in other words. And because Japanese language and literature is like heavily based on hiragana letters, characters, I think that like brings out the very unique tone and the voice of Japanese narratives. And I think people are like more and more interested in this like soft textures and how to say it's a very different way of telling stories from Western literature, and maybe people are like more fascinated by this character.
Wow, that was fascinating from both of you. Thank you very, very much, Tomoka and Leo. 本当にありがとうございます. Thank you very, very much for your answers and for your readings today. Really grateful. Moto, Thank you yet again for everything. This is the new issue, Monkey Volume 5. It's now available at monkeymagazine.org in North America and around the world. Please, I encourage you to grab it. It's a beautiful issue. I mean, it's beautiful inside and out with graphic storytelling. Satoshi Kitamura, of course, our amazing friend, has another amazing piece in this. It's wonderful, monkeymagazine.org. Thanks again to Japan Society of Boston. We don't want to keep everyone up all night.
Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us tonight.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you,
Bye-bye.
everyone. Thanks for joining us.
Bye.
Cheers. Cheers from Tokyo.
Cheers.